This reparations panel has recommended to California that they pay $1.2 million or up to $1.2 million to each Black person in California. There's different standards for different things the people might have experienced that allow them to collect different amounts of money. So basically, if you've lived in California since the 1930s and you experienced, redlining, or you experienced over-policing, quote unquote, I don't know what that means. Over-policing. We can talk about that separately, but that term seems a little all-encompassing, doesn't it? Or mass incarceration. If you or someone you are related to suffered from mass incarceration, again, what are the elements of that? What are the standards of that? Is that just this Black Lives Matter narrative that there's a disproportionate percentage of Black people that are put in jail, assuming that it's based on the color of their skin versus the crimes that they commit? Anyway, if you have experienced or tangentially experienced any of these things, then you get to, you qualify for different amounts of money. And if you're, say, like a 70-year-old in California who's lived in California all their life, then you could be eligible for up to $1.2 million. The ironic part is that slavery was never legal in the state of California, ever. Slavery was never legal, so none of these people who've lived in California have ever experienced slavery because we don't have slavery in this country. None of these people living in California, even their ancestors, did not experience slavery in California. So why the state of California owes them reparations is a little bit of a head scratcher. The panel justifies their recommendation for reparations based on the fact that the Fugitive Slave Act was not prohibited in California when it was a thing, century or like so far back that none of the people in California even tangentially experienced the effects of that. This is obviously ridiculous, but beyond being ridiculous, it is socialism. This is redistribution of wealth because there's no limiting principle on this, right? If Black people who were never enslaved, Black people who live in a state that never had slavery, regardless of the fact that this was generations ago, if they qualify as so marginalized that it justifies the government giving them my money, for example, why don't I qualify? Why don't I qualify as a woman? Because as women, were we not generations past deprived of certain rights that men in our country were allowed to enjoy? Maybe getting a credit card, or driving, or working, or voting, or owning property if you weren't married. Were there not elements of American life that women were deprived of? So why would I not be eligible for reparations from any state, really? Because it clearly doesn't matter if the state was ever part of inflicting this marginalization on you. And where does this end? It's not just women. What about gay people? What about gay people who were, say, not allowed to get married until 9 years ago? What about them? Were they not deprived of what the left considers to be a right? Were they not marginalized? Do they not deserve to be paid? The limiting principle here is non-existent, as you could see. You could go down the line and any person at any time could identify with some kind of immutable characteristic and claim that some political policy, not just slavery, right? Some political policy negatively impacted them because of that status, because of that immutable characteristic, and therefore the government owes them a certain amount of money. Now, perhaps this is what's intended by this policy because this is what the left actually wants. They want government to be in charge of everybody's money. They want government to redistribute the wealth. That is socialism. And it leads to communism and Marxism, and that's exactly what the left wants.